HomePod, Apple's smart speaker, came out a little over 2 years ago now. When it first came out, it received a lot of praise for how great the speaker sounded, but this quickly became overshadowed by a lack of features when comparing to its competitors. This led to a general consensus that the HomePod is basically the best Apple Music speaker you can buy, but for anything else there are much better options. In the 2 years that the HomePod has been out, Apple's competitors, mainly Amazon and Google, have continued to expand their lineup. These lineups now mainly consist of a small cheap model, a base model, a model with a screen, and a higher-end speaker model. But Apple hasn't done anything with their lineup hardware-wise, so that means all they've been able to do is expand on the features software-wise. Some of these features that they've introduced are multi-user support, multi-timer support, and audio handoff. Before we get into some of those features, let's talk about how the hardware has held up. The HomePod is incredibly nice. It looks awesome sitting on the counter, and it's held up really well over the 2 years that I've owned it. But I think this is to be expected because you don't really touch the HomePod that often, so it's just kind of sitting there. As I mentioned, the sound quality has been a standout feature of the HomePod since it came out. This is helped by audio that automatically adapts to its surroundings based on where the HomePod is sitting in your home. The HomePod is a very nice sounding speaker, and it is without a doubt the best sounding speaker that I own, but it's also the most expensive speaker that I own. The other main component to the HomePod is Siri, and I think the only word to describe Siri is fine. Siri works for basic commands like setting timers, checking the weather, and doing HomeKit stuff, but anything else is where you kind of get into trouble. If you're an Apple Music subscriber, Siri is awesome with the HomePod. You can use Siri to play anything in your Apple Music library, or anything in your Apple Podcast library, or any local radio stations. This stuff all works really well. But all other sources of audio require you to use AirPlay to get it to the HomePod, and this is much less convenient. Apple tried to fix this by introducing a feature called Audio Handoff, where you can just hold your phone near the HomePod and it'll magically send the audio to it. But I've had a lot of issues with this working. Sometimes it works great, and other times I'll try it and it just doesn't work at all. Another big factor with the HomePod is HomeKit integration. You can control anything in your HomeKit smart home setup with the HomePod, and it usually works pretty well. One of the newer features that I mentioned is multi-user support, a feature that I don't personally use all that often, but it definitely is something that needs to be here. This is what enables you to tell Siri to do something like send a message or check your calendar or set a reminder, and it can know who's talking to it, so it knows whose account to associate that task with. So what are some of the reasons to choose the HomePod? What does it do best? I think one of the main things here is HomeKit. I have a bunch of Philips Hue lights throughout my house, and executing commands like turn the lights on, adjust the brightness, or turn the lights off, it all works super fast and super reliable. Another thing that I think the HomePod is better at is hearing you when you're talking to it. When you say the wake word, the HomePod almost always hears you, whether music is playing, or you're watching something on TV, or even when you're in a different room. It's really good at hearing you, and that helps because you can do more things throughout your house. And finally, one of the more obvious things, like I mentioned, is Apple Music support. If you're an Apple Music subscriber, this is definitely the best speaker you can buy to give voice commands to get your music playing. But since Apple makes both products, this is to be expected. While the HomePod does have many great capabilities, there's still a lot of room for improvement. First, and I wish this wasn't first, but Apple needs to fix some of the features that they've introduced and get them to work reliably. Features like audio handoff, multi-user support, and even pairing them in stereo, it's just hit or miss for me. Sometimes I'll take my phone and try and send the audio to it by holding it up to it, and it'll work great just like as expected. But other times nothing happens, and there's no reason why, and there's no feedback, so I don't understand what's happening, and you're questioning what to do, how to troubleshoot it. It's very frustrating. And this is the same thing with multi-user support and even pairing them in stereo. I've had it where I had music playing out of both, and all of a sudden it just stops playing out of one, and I look at my phone and it just shows one HomePod. I don't know what happened to the other one. Apple needs to get this stuff fixed in order for me to keep trusting the HomePod and wanting to keep using it. I also would really like Apple to expand the hardware lineup similar to what their competitors have done. I want to be able to commit to a smart home experience. And if I do that with the HomePods, I would have to spend thousands of dollars to put them throughout my house. They really need to make a cheaper one, and it doesn't need to have that great of speaker quality. If I put one in something like a bedroom, I don't need it to be able to blast music. And I also think it would be really great if they would make one with a screen. I really like using my Google Home Hub to show as a digital picture frame. And this is something Apple could definitely do to integrate with the photo library, and even use it to make FaceTime calls. As I mentioned before, the HomePod is definitely the best speaker that I own. It sounds the best. I have two of them sitting on either side of my TV, and naturally I want to be able to use them when I'm watching TV. You can do this with an Apple TV by connecting via AirPlay, but it's not really that great of an experience. Once you set it up, it'll work for a while, but if you come back later, it might still be connected, but it might not, which means you have to connect it again. So I really wish Apple would let you set the audio from your Apple TV to go to the HomePods by default and just stay that way. The only thing here is, for example, if I wanted to do something like on a Nintendo Switch, then I wouldn't be able to get the audio to come through that. But 90% of my usage is watching TV on the Apple TV. So this is something that I'd be willing to deal with. Continuing on with the theme of integrating with the Apple TV, I don't get why you can't use the HomePod to execute commands to open up stuff on the Apple TV, especially when Apple makes their own TV shows. You can do some of this by setting up shortcuts, and some of it does work out of the box, like playing and pausing or stopping stuff, but I really wish Apple would let you open up certain apps like Netflix and get something playing, or Hulu, or like I said, especially their own TV shows. This stuff should just work. If you're an Apple Music subscriber, Siri is excellent with the HomePod, but there are a ton of people that aren't Apple Music subscribers like me who subscribe to Spotify. And I really wish you could set Spotify as the default music service like you can with Amazon and Google. Not being able to control Spotify with Siri hasn't made me switch to Apple Music, and it's not going to in the future. If anything, if they let you do this, it's going to make me use my HomePod more. And I don't want to have to say, Siri, play this on Spotify. I want it to just work by saying, play this. They need to let you be able to set it as the default app. Finally, I kind of wish Apple could improve on integrating the timers that you set on the HomePod throughout all of your other Apple devices. When you set a timer right now on the HomePod, there's really no feedback showing you how much time is left. You have to ask Siri, and sometimes that's just not convenient. So it'd be nice if you could have the timer show up on your watch or on your phone's lock screen like the iPhone timer does, or even maybe in the control center on the Apple TV. I think integrating all this stuff is usually what Apple is best at, so the timers is something that I think they could do this with. Apple has continued to expand the features of the HomePod through software with many updates over the last 2 years, and this is really great when they work. But I hope Apple continues to focus on the HomePod more than just adding software features and continuing to expand the lineup. And also, like I said, they really need to get these features working to be reliable, to be consistent. And then I think they're definitely going to be able to get more customers with the HomePod. But for now, I don't think I could recommend this to someone over a cheap Amazon Echo or Google Home Hub, because it's just too expensive and there's just too many issues still. As always, thank you for watching, and if you get a chance, please like and subscribe. And also, if there's something on the HomePod that you'd like to see change, please let me know what it is in the comments. Thank you.